Today we're going to show you how to convert mechanical fuel injection to electronic fuel injection using a Haltech engine management system, an enormous MSD coil, a high pressure fuel system from Phytech, and a bunch of time.
Okay, just a little bit of history on the car, which is pretty cool, I think. I bought this car new in '69. It's a real Z28. I went to my prom, my high school prom in this car. I was dating someone from another school. I went to her prom in it. I used to play in a band. I hauled my drums to the band job everywhere with it. I couldn't even haul a passenger because I had my toms on the passenger seat, all my hardware in the back and cymbals. But anyway, it's got a lot of history. And then I guess it was 71, I started Superstock racing it, NHRA Superstock. It ran Superstock J class with the 302. I actually had a 650 rear end gear because you had to twist this thing. It sounded like a bumblebee. And I tell everybody I broke everything on the car at least once, but it was fast. I got an NHRA Wally, a class 1 Wally with it in Superstock at the 77 Englishtown Summer Nationals. And then when York closed in '79, York US 30, I was so distraught because that was my home track. All my friends went race there every weekend. I parked it in my basement. I didn't even have a garage. I had 2 4-foot doors in my basement. I could just barely get it in. I parked it right beside my washing machine in my basement. And it sat there for a couple years. And then in '81, I made it into what you see now. And I did everything on the car except the paint. I did the cage, the frame connectors. I narrowed the frame, made the tubs. I did everything myself. I'm not a painter. You wouldn't want a car that I painted. I wouldn't want a car that I painted. But anyway, I did everything else. Of course, it's a small block. Looks like a big block, but it has the really hard to find Larson Engineering valve covers that make it look like a big block. They haven't made those things since the early '80s or mid '80s. They're hard to find, but everyone always thought it was a big block. But it's a 350 60 over. The motor was built by Charlie Garrett in Hanover, Pennsylvania. He always did my fastest streetcar motors when I had the '57 Corvette and the '53. Fantastic engine builder. But anyway, he built the engine. We kind of built it a little stout because you have to remember, I just came off the racetrack and I was going back to the street. So I wasn't worried about user-friendly driving. And it's pretty healthy motor. We're figuring around 800, maybe a little more horsepower. But the interesting thing was the hat. That's what we really wanted to show. This hat came off of Lee Weller, his top fuel car. Lee Weller was a guy in Westminster that everybody knew. He drove for Jim and Allison Lee. He drove a top fuel car. Then he had his own top fuel car, and that came off of his top fuel car. That's what they ran back then, was the bug catchers, until they went to the bird and then the bigger ones, the buzzer catchers. But anyway, that came right off of his top fuel car, and he was running nitromethane in it, and I got it working on gas, and it wasn't easy. And it worked great, except for when it wouldn't start, it wouldn't start. If you flood the cylinders, forget it, it wasn't going to start. So we ended up getting that problem fixed. But anyway, this was, had to be one, I'm not going to say it was the first, but it had to be one of the very first ones out. It was out in '81 with that hat on it. And Carcraft magazine even came out with an article, "It's for real," because no one thought it was real. And the reason why was we weren't squirting fuel into butterflies to get it started. You don't have accelerator pump like you do on a carburetor, so you have to squirt fuel in. Well, I came up with an idea. I had nitrous lines going into nitrous lines underneath between the hat and the blower, and with my nitrous solenoid, I was squirting gas through the nitrous solenoid to get it started, which was pretty simple. No one really believed I was doing that, and that's how I started. I'd go in the car and I'd count 1001, 1002, 1003, and then fire it. But anyway, so it started. I think this car was one of the cars that started the hat revolution.
Okay, so we're going to switch out the old distributor in this vehicle to a new unit from MSD. MSD make a great unit that can be used to run the old Sun mechanical tachometer. So we think that's really cool.
The wires probably haven't been off for 34 years. It's serious. Since the last time I owned it, which was 34 years ago.
Do you want to take this breather over your side? There you go. What's that, Rod?
First time I had that in my hands in almost 35 years. So what we want to do, we want to set it in there. So you want to mark it with a marker?
Yeah, I'll mark where you want the one.
There you go. So I can see it on the top.
Yep. So when you run aftermarket fuel injection, you want to control your timing with the computer. What you do is you lock out your distributor. Now we've already locked out this distributor. It's really easy, instructions on MSD's website. But one thing people don't often think about is by locking out the distributor, you've then removed all mechanical advance. And because of that, as you're going through the timing cycle of the engine, your distributor's not going to be moving and you're going to be out of phase with where the spark plug is attached. So what you want to do is align your distributor right at the point where it's at number 1 cylinder, where it's making the peak horsepower or torque. A few different ways of thinking about it. I typically do torque, particularly in a blown engine, where you're making the peak torque of the engine. So we've set the engine to the spot where we think we make peak torque in this engine. We're not quite sure yet. And then we've marked the distributor at number 1, where we think we can get the tach drive to work. So hopefully all of this works out and lines up. We'll find out. We've chosen to go with 8 fuel injectors in this plate from Joe Blow. They keep everything nice and up hidden inside the hat. We had a little bit of an issue with the plugs not fitting. You could either notch these or just pin the plugs like we've done and then shrink it all so there's no interference. One thing to remember, where your wiring goes through, make sure you put silicone in there, so we're about to do that. Yeah, that's probably good. Just can't have it leak. This is our sheathing from Wirecare. So you just buy this online and it tidies up these type of projects really well. Helps protect your wires, keeps them safe from heat and various other things. If you're right next to headers, they also do one with fiberglass.
And looks good. You line that up, Matt, with that hole in the back. You got it? Okay. Okay, that's good. All the fuel injections inside that hat, it's hidden in there. We closed off the outside butterflies. These are just for looks now. They don't do anything. We're running off the center butterfly, which makes a lot of sense because with all 3 of those butterfly, that's a lot of air to compensate for. So that's why we got it manageable. And with Matt's help, we've got this thing. I would have never thought we could get it to idle. It's idling below 1,000 RPM. We can put like 800,
Yeah.
800, 850. That's pretty daggone good for a fuel injected car like this with a blower.
The other thing, obviously, after the fuel injectors is the high pressure fuel system. So with this vehicle, we've run a return style system with a regulator here. The high pressure fuel feeds into one side of the hat through all those Joe Blow injector plate systems and out through the return regulator. We're holding it about 43.5. And if you come around the back, Rod's got this old fuel cell that he had for all the previous fuel systems in this vehicle. And what we've done is plumbed this through a Holley Black pump, which has more than enough flow for the 800 odd horsepower that we're making here, up into this Phytech fuel surge tank, which has an inbuilt pump, and that's got the high pressure pump inside. So the purpose of this is to keep that high pressure pump always submerged in fuel, so you never starve out of fuel. You run that up to the front, as we saw up there. You run the line up, round by the pressure regulator and back. We obviously wire these into the engine control system, and you do that with EFI so that you don't have the fuel pumps running when the car's not running, or if you're in an accident, the Haltech or whatever engine management system you're running can turn the fuel pumps off for safety. Also, Rod's installed this rollover valve. We've still got to hook up a line to that.
All these wires. Matt, you're surrounded by wires.
Surrounded by wires. And this, so this goes to there. So this one,
So the red one we can run to the MSD?
yep, we can actually use both of these.
Well, I've got a lot of mounting to do.
Yeah, even if you got no wiring done, we could wire in a couple of hours. Now we've got it figured out. Really, it's about getting them on.
So we're installing 1032. I use Home Pro, but you can get them. Different companies make them, and they're nut certs. They're actually kind of like a pop rivet, but you're actually putting threads into something. It works great when you can't get behind it to put nuts on the back. You have to drill it out. In this case, it's 9/32. You have to make sure this knurling is tight. So I like to make it as tight as I also tapered it too to get rid of the edge. But you want to squeeze it in there so it's nice and solid. And you see how that is? Now you can actually watch when I squeeze this. It squeezes the back so it can't come through. See, and you don't want to go too far because you'll pull the threads out of this. So obviously that's plenty far enough, and then you just unscrew it. And there you go. You've got a 1032. All right, well, being Matt showed you everything that we did to make it electronic fuel injection, I thought it'd be really interesting to see what we took off the car, because all this is 40-year-old technology, and we replaced it with all this new, and it's a world of difference. I mean, an absolute world of difference. But first off, the pulleys, we slowed the blower down a little bit. We went from a 35 tooth to a 37. We made the blower pulley a little bit bigger, and we made the bottom pulley a little smaller. We went from a 33 to a 30. So that slows the blower down a little bit, makes it a little bit more manageable. I'm a lot older now than I was 40 years ago, so I want it to be driver user friendly. And then this is an old Kinsler mechanical pump that we used. It actually works pretty good. Just was, as you can see, a lot more to it back then to try to get it to work. And then a lot of people recognize the old Excel coil. It's 40 years old. That actually worked. Here's a little Kinsler Dollar Jet that I had to help me tune the car. Of course, I don't need that anymore. Old Excel distributor with the crab cap on it, tack drive, because I have the tack on the dash, cable-driven tack that I used when I ran it in Superstock, which I wanted to keep. People recognize the old Holley blue pumps. They probably pumped around 7 pounds of pressure, which that wouldn't work for this. Put a bigger pulley on the crank, a smaller pulley on the alternator to spin the alternator faster. That really helped. And then this is like a little surge tank that Kinsler came up with back in the early 80s. This actually worked pretty good. This is the old Laser 2 Excel. That's 40 years old. Just a lot of doodads to make everything work. I had to make a lot of brackets up, homemade brackets. But this is interesting. This is the line I took off the car. There's probably 50, 60, 70 feet of line in here. And now, basically, it's real simple. Now we have a return line back to the tank. We have a feed line, and that's about it. We have a breather line on the tank, like Matt was talking about. We want it to breathe. That was a blast, yeah. Luckily that Tina and I were out there and we got to cruise a lot with Matt and Debbie Hagan and their Thunderbird, and they're saying it might be their last time out with their Thunderbird. I hope it's not the last time that they attend, but I have a feeling that they want to retire the Thunderbird. So we got to cruise with them for the last time. And this is kind of the rebirth of this car. You know, it's been since '84, it's been out. And I tell you, the car just ran flawlessly. I was afraid to, even when people were asking me how it was running, I was afraid to say because I didn't want to jinx myself. But it just ran flawlessly. It was hot, and the car never got over 180. And of course, Ron Davis helped me out with that. I always ran Ron Davis radiators in my race cars. And you know, I was running 16, 17 to 1 compression in these big naturally aspirated motors, so I needed a lot of cooling. And so that's why I went with them. And I think it's a testament to them to keep this thing this cool.
Working on this car, I think it's a big deal because this is one of the first cars to have a hat on the street. And I don't know about you, but when you start drawing cars, when you're in elementary school or primary school, the first thing you do, no matter what car it is, if you draw a picture of your dad's car, the first thing you do is you put a hat out of the bonnet of the car. And to me, to get to work on one of the cars that started that trend and started the pro street trend, and Rod's won a Wally with it. This car has got so many things over the years, and I like the plate. Rod put plates innovator on it, and that's really to tell you about the car. Rod sees this car as the innovator. This car made Rod rethink about how to get mechanical injection the first time working on the street, and how to get this electronic fuel injection set up and working well on the street, and how to get back to the show. It's definitely a car that started a lot of innovation for Rod in his what became a very successful drag racing career and program over the years. So it's really exciting for me to get to work on this car.